Welcome back to the channel, folks. Today we're going to be working on this 98 Tacoma. I'm going to be getting rid of the 3-inch body lift. We're going to be downsizing to a 1-inch. You can see here we've got a 3-inch puck that is inserted on the truck bed as well as the cab. This truck, the third owner. The first two owners, one of them probably installed this 3-inch body lift kit, and I'm going to be downsizing it today to a 1-inch body lift. The reason for that is I don't need 3 inches of body lift. I don't really want 3 inches of body lift. The reason I went with 1 inch of body lift is because I'm going to be putting Chevy leaf springs on the back of this truck, and that's going to require me to be using longer shocks as well. With the 1-inch body lift, that will buy me some space in between the frame and the truck bed where I can run basically a bar or a brace that I can mount new shock tabs to relocate my shocks. So the 1-inch body lift is kind of necessary. It will also just buy me a little extra space up front for rubbing with the 33 tires on it. So, you know, I think it's going to be a good route for this truck. Definitely looking forward to dropping it by 2 inches because I am not a fan of the 3-inch body lift look. Having that much frame showing underneath the side of the truck is not the best. I'll probably start up front on this thing and do the cab first because I am going to try and leave the camper shell on the back while I basically do this whole install or uninstall, if you will. And the issue I'm thinking is going to happen is if I do the truck bed first and drop it down 2 inches, this cap is going to butt into the cab, and that's going to be no bueno. So I think I'm going to hold off on the back, and I'm going to start with the front and drop the cab down by 2 inches. And then we'll come back, do the rear once we have a little bit of breathing room right there in between the cab and the camper shell. Up front here on the driver's side, I'll show you guys real quick what we're working with. Right down there is a bumper relocation bracket with those 4 bolts on it. That's gonna have to come off along with the front bumper. So I'm gonna start there, get the front bumper off, and then you can even see one of the 3-inch pucks right behind that there. So we'll grab, I believe there's 1, 2 right up by the driver's pedals, and then the last one for the cab is going to be by the back seat, and then obviously you have 3 on the other side. The other thing we're going to have to do is mess with the steering shaft here, which is hard to show you guys, but we'll get there. We're going to have to basically disconnect that, pull the extension off of it, put a 1-inch extension on it instead, and that should be all good for steering. So I'm going to start with just getting this front bumper off. So these 2 right here were a 14 mil. This one on the back side is going to be a 16. Wonder if I can just zip this off. Okay, 2 bolts. I'm just going to leave the other 2 in, pull the bumper off, and then I'll take those other 2 bolts off up here once I have the bumper actually off the top. The front bumper as well as the grille, and this is what the Taco looks like. I've never seen it in this form, so this is kind of interesting. Next up, I'm going to be starting to work on removing the radiator brackets. It's going to be like this bolt right up here, if you can see that, and then same on the other side. And basically there's extension brackets that are holding the radiator up higher than it really needs to be. So we're going to remove those and drop the radiator back down. And I want to show you guys the kit real quick. Right here is the 1-inch body lift kit. I'm going to go ahead and leave a link to the guys that I picked this up from. Their ordering process is it's a little different. It just involves you taking some time to figure out how to order what you need. But I'm going to leave a link down below because they're super informative and give you a ton of help if you ask for it. So here we've got obviously the new bushings or new spacers that are only 1 inch in diameter, or thickness, I should say. New hardware, bed spacers, steering column spacer, and that bracket that holds the bumper on that I just took off, that's going to be what replaces that. It's obviously a little bit thinner. It's only going to be a 1-inch spacer instead of a 3-inch. And I almost forgot to make note, don't forget to pull your little, not fog lights, but turn signal bulbs out of your bumper before it actually drops down. If it does, it's definitely going to rip that harness. So just twist those out each side, pull the bumper off. The grill, just take your time with it. Use the little pinch tabs, take it off. Just want to remind you guys not to break your bulbs. You can see I've already loosened up this extension bracket. It's tied to the radiator, and then this screw that was just there came out through the firewall that I removed. And then now I'm just trying to remove the bracket. There's 4 of them, so 1 up top, 1 down below, 1 up top on this side, and then also 1 down below. So 4 of those. I'm going to take that off and get the radiator put back up in the right position. There's the 4 brackets that basically lower the radiator with the 3-inch body lift. So I've got those off, and I think I'm going to be reusing the factory nuts that are still in it. So that'll work out nicely. As for the truck and the radiator is completely loose right now. I don't really want to put anything back as far as the radiator goes yet, mainly because it's not going to fit just yet. I need to lower the body up here, so that way it's going to be a little bit more centered with the motor, because right now I'm running into an issue where it's going to hit the fan, and I can't center it until we actually lower the body or the cab of the truck. So that's the plan. I'm going to basically start figuring out now where my hardware goes, and we're going to start removing these 3-inch pucks and replacing them with the 1-inch. Right now I'm working on the steering column extension and removing it. It's back up behind this little flap here. The steering column is going down, and this piece right here with this little bolt, Allen bolt coming out of it, is where you have to unscrew it, at least on mine. For my 3-inch lift, I'm removing the 3-inch extension off the steering column, so I had to break this nut loose, which is quite the challenge. So what I ended up doing was rotating the tire and moving the tire until this was in a good orientation where I could crawl under the truck and use my impact to unscrew that. So that's what I did. It's loose now, and I think there's even 1 more bolt I have to loosen up. And then once we get that extension out, then we can actually move on to the 1-inch spacers, or I should say removing the 3-inch spacers. I got the steering extension off. This was for the 3-inch body lift. Obviously you can tell it extends the threads of the steering column by about 3 inches. And this is, I believe, the factory piece that this basically goes down into to extend it. So this was that really awkward kind of Allen that I had to get loose off there. And then I just used a hammer to kind of push this up and get it out of this piece. I took this piece off, which is just 2 bolts here. I don't think I'll keep these bolts, these 2 hanging down, because this is the new one for the 1-inch body lift, and it actually comes with extended bolts in there. So what I think I'm going to do is just keep these in there for now so I know the orientation, and I'll try and get this maybe set up so that way all we have left to do is do the actual body lift pucks, and then we can just lower this steering column down. Oh, well, I just snapped the head on the bolt. So I guess this is why it's a good idea to change these out. This hardware is no longer any good. I've successfully removed the 2 long bolts from both of these front mounts. So right now there's no bolt in between these pucks. Right now it's just basically sitting on its own weight, and I'm going to move to the other ones. On the driver's side, if you go in, you'll have to pull off this long piece that goes here, and then also this little kick panel there. Pull the carpet back, and you will find this little black puck there. Pull that cap out, and there you have your bolt. And then right underneath, you've got your 3-inch block. So I'm going to put a wrench on either side of that nut and get that bolt out, and do the same on the other side. And the washer. And now in the rear of the driver's side, if you take up this little piece here, you will find another little black cup with a bolt underneath it right back there. So you're going to put a wrench on that one, and then coming to the outside towards the back of the cab, you have the other mount right there. I've now got all the bolts out of the cab, both sides, front and back. My thought is, because the steering column is on the driver's side and I have to, as I jack it down, I need to make sure that that steering column drops down into the rack and pinion. So I'm going to start on the passenger side, and basically what I've done here is grabbed my jack, a couple lengths of wood to widen out the stance of the jack. I'm going to jack up the passenger side and pull out all of these 3-inch pucks and slide in the 1-inch pucks. And my goal is to drop it down to the 1-inch puck, and then I'm going to jump on the driver's side and hopefully do the same thing while I also get the steering column rod down into the rack and pinion. So I'm going to start again on the passenger side, lift it up just enough to get the blocks out, and then lower it back down. The front end of the Tacoma, meaning the cab, is now sitting on the 1-inch blocks. You can see right there, over there. There's the front one by the driver's pedals, and on the back side of the cab is the rear mount. So all I need to do now is go back and tighten all these bolts. I've got all of the basically cab bushings done. The front end is almost done. All I have left to do is go around, tighten all of the bolts. Remember, there's 2 on each side and then these 2 up front. So I'm gonna go through, tighten all those, put my carpets inside the truck back together. I also need to put the radiator, mount that back onto the front end here. And then I also need to take the old brackets off the bumper and add the new ones, which shouldn't take long at all. And that will basically wrap up the front end of the truck. All that's left to do is the bed. I will say one thing, the hardest part about the front is going to be getting the steering column to go back into the little hole that mounts on the actual rack and pinion. So the best way I did it was to jack up the passenger side, pull the pucks out, put the new ones in, and then drop the passenger side down, and then do the same thing on the driver's side. But when I got to that point where the new pucks were in and I was ready to lower it, I had Jenna lower the truck slowly with the jack, while I had a hand on the steering column and kind of just wiggling it with some PB Blaster to make sure it slides into the little rack and pinion sleeve very nicely. The radiator is attached. I did have to take off this lower portion of the fan shroud because the 1-inch body lift basically doesn't center the fan perfectly. So the fan was kind of rubbing up against this lower shroud. So I just unclipped it really easy. And now the radiator is in there. The fan can spin without hitting that lower shroud. Day 2. I got the cab done yesterday, and unfortunately my front bumper mounts are not going to work, the ones that came with the kit. It would involve me actually notching my frame, and I'm not really willing to do that for this bumper, especially because I don't want to keep this bumper. I'm eventually going to get a nice tube bumper. So I think I'm just going to rock it with a little 1-inch gap underneath the grille and the headlights for now. And then I've been working on the back end ever so slightly. All I've done is remove the filler neck for the fuel. So right here, obviously we have no more fuel neck. I had to pull this little mud fender liner back to be able to get access to it. And then I've stuffed a rag in the opening so that way the fumes from the gas don't, come out as much and stuff doesn't fall in the tank. The next step I had to do was remove my bumper. And let me show you this. So normally there's a bolt there. I took that one out. Normally there's a bolt in these holes here. I went to go take that out. Whoever did the body lift last time, they put the bolt in here and then they just welded the bumper on both sides to the frame of the truck. So there's no bolts or hardware holding on the bumper right now. It's just those 2 welds. So I now have to figure out how to break those welds before I can do anything because, well, obviously the bumper is cinched right up to the body, so that leaves no room for the body to go down. I need to go 2 inches down on the truck bed, so the bumper definitely has to come off. I think what I'm gonna do is grab my drill and try and drill out those welds. Today's a new day. I've removed the rear bumper. It was welded onto the frame of the truck in about 6 different places. So it took me a while to grind out those welds and get this bumper removed. I've gone ahead and just touched up with some spray paint the areas that were basically exposed metal. And now I'm actually ready to start working on the body lift on the back of the truck. Next is there are 3 pucks on each side. You have one there, and also one back behind the fender well. I believe most of these are gonna be like a 19 millimeter to get these out. And I think at least for these ones, you need a ratchet on top or something to grab the nut on top while you undo the bolts on the bottom. Day 3. I've got the Tacoma's rear bumper off of the truck, and I've also got the hitch taken off as well. So let me show you what that looks like. I finished up the body lift yesterday afternoon. The rear bumper and all that was what took me the longest. So I'll definitely do a little walk around here and show you, but for starters, we'll take a look at the back because it's kind of interesting. Here we go, back of the Tacoma, no rear bumper, no hitch, and the 3-inch body lift is removed down to a 1-inch body lift. I've also managed to keep the license plate, and I even rigged up one of the license plate lights above it, so at nighttime it does actually shine on the license plate. Although we've got a little bit of blue in the sky, it looks like it might rain. So what I want to do is, I was looking at the rear bumper, and I think I can take the little shrouds off of it and put them onto the actual bulbs as covers, so that way it keeps moisture and obviously rain when I wash the truck, just keeps water off of them. So I'm gonna try and rig that up, and then I've also got a few more things to tidy up. Plus I wanna show you guys the ins and outs of this body lift and what it looks like all finished up. So these shrouds here, I'm gonna try and take off. It looks like it's just 2 Phillips heads, and this should come out off the bumper pretty easy. It looks like this gasket is pretty much toast. Yeah, look at that. No good anymore. This is actually the 3rd time we filmed this clip, and the first time things were in manual focus. So the whole 5-minute clip was out of focus. The second time, I forgot to hit record. 3rd time, we're doing it right, recording currently, and I wanted to show you guys the truck all finished up. So up front here, this is just how it looks with the 1-inch body lift. We removed 2 inches of body lift out of this, guys. The reason I kept the 1-inch body lift, I've explained it before, but gotta have more room in the back for a new shock tab brace for running across the truck bed. Because we're gonna be doing the Chevy Leafs, I'm gonna need more room back there to be able to relocate the shocks and actually benefit a little bit more from having those Chevy Leafs. So let's go ahead and start around back, and I will kind of work my way up front and just kind of run over what I've done so far and how things turned out on the truck with the 1-inch body lift. As you can tell, there's no rear bumper. There's also no longer a hitch mount here. I removed both. The rear bumper, as I mentioned before, was actually welded onto the frame in about 6 different locations, so I had to cut out those welds. I didn't really feel like drilling out new holes just to be able to mount that stock bumper back on this with the 1-inch body lift. It's a lot of work, and because I don't want to keep this stock bumper, I'd rather do like a tube bumper with a built-in hitch system. I'm just gonna leave it off for now. I think it looks good. Looks kind of cool. Extra clearance. Mucho bueno. Underneath the front bumper, I've run the wiring all the way across here. Basically, the reason for that is just to tuck it away. The trailer hitch wiring I don't really need right now. And I also relocated the license plate off to the side here. Everything is using zip ties. It's a wonderful little tool. I recommend them. And then I've also zip tied a license plate light right above the plate, so that way it does actually illuminate at nighttime, and everything is tucked out of the way. Looks pretty decent. Moving around the side of the truck, this is something I wanted to show you guys. So the gas cap obviously had like a 3-inch extension tube on it for the old body lift. I tried to remove it. I think I still need to make some adjustments because this cap is pushed out pretty far, at least further than I would like it to be. But the good thing is it still closes. So I can always lock it up for now, and it's nice and flush. But eventually I'll need to go back there, shorten up the hoses on the other end of this. That way this gets pushed back a little bit further, kind of replicating more of what it was when it was stock. Up front here, the 33s, obviously the same tire setup, wheel and tire setup. So the only issue I had initially was, if you kind of look back here, right here, I just had to trim back a little bit of this fender liner. It was already ripped up before from previous lifts, previous owners. So I just trimmed it a little bit here on the bottom, and that keeps the 33s from rubbing. Right up here is the front bumper mount. As you can tell, there's no actual relocation bracket. So this is the stock mounting points for the front bumper. So as you can tell, there's a little bit of a gap here between the front bumper and the cab. And the reason for that is I couldn't make the bumper brackets work to push this bumper up 1 inch to match the body lift. So like I said, I'm gonna be doing 2 bumpers on this thing. I don't wanna drill out my frame just to make the stock bumper work. Really no point in that. I'm okay with this gap for the meantime. And then obviously up front, you can definitely see the gap, but it's something I'm just gonna live with. I'm hoping to do the 2 bumpers here in the next 6 months or so, like I've said before. That would be ideal, but you know, money. Thank you guys so much for watching and tuning into the channel. If you're new here, think about subscribing, join the family. It's up to you. You don't have to, but it would be cool. Secondly, hit that thumbs up button. It really does help the algorithm push my content out to other like-minded folks who would also enjoy watching it. And if you have any tips, suggestions, maybe you're doing something similar on your rig, put it down in the comments, let me know. I always like to find out. And I will see you guys in the next one. Keep elevating all that good stuff. Adios.